We're on night watch on motor vessel Starr. We're up in the Bering Sea heading from Attu, the westernmost point in the USA, about 350 nautical miles to Adak Island, also in the Aleutians, just a little bit further east. We're making our way from Japan to Dutch Harbor, and then we'll continue on to Prince William Sound, Southeast Alaska, and back down to Seattle over the course of the summer. Walk through what night watch is like here. Most of the time, thankfully, it's not all that exciting. We do have a little bit of traffic up here. All the ships between Asia and North America, the west coast of North America, transit up here. They're on the Great Circle route, the shortest route between Asia and West Coast North America. Haven't seen many for the last several days, but we know they're out there when we look at AIS online. Too far away for us to see on our own transponder or radars most of the time, but we're keeping an eye out for them. So from port, we have a FLIR camera. This is more useful when going into a port or harbor at night or an anchorage. It just doesn't have enough range at cruising speed to be all that useful, and fog or rain will make it completely useless. We have one of the two radars. We keep this one typically at about 24 miles, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on the traffic. That gives us plenty of lead time for the big ships, which tend to move at 15 to 22 knots or so, so they can close the distance pretty quickly. Here's a second radar. This one we typically keep a little bit more zoomed in. We're at 8 miles right now. Nothing on either radar screen at the moment. We also have two computers running chart plotting software. We're using Coastal Explorer, and we keep one zoomed in pretty close. The idea is to see obstacles that might be on our plotted course. And a second Coastal Explorer with a zoomed out a little bit more. This shows us general progress and AIS targets that might be further away. Up top from starboard, we have our NIAD datum stabilizer control. We're running on just one fin somewhere between Okinawa and Guam. A few months ago, we rotated one of our stabilizer fins on the shaft. The fin's still there, but it's skewed about 30 degrees, so we adjusted it so it's a center and pinned the fin. Here is a GPS. This is actually a secondary location and speed source. We tend to use the satellite compass primarily. Get to that in a moment. Here are some instruments showing temperature and barometer and so forth. That's adjustable depending on what we need to show. VHF radio tuned to 16. We have a couple of these on board. Only this one is on at the moment, and we haven't heard any VHF chatter in at least a week. It's been pretty quiet. Here we have our satellite compass. We don't tend to look at this display all that often, but it keeps a log of the trip. This is 200 nautical miles since we left Honolulu back in February. We've been on the move. The satellite compass feeds the autopilot and the radars and the chart plotters position and heading data. This is our AIS transponder. We've got a Class A AIS, so we change our status depending on if we're at anchor or tied up to a dock or underway. And here are the main engine gauges. Starr is a single engine boat built in the late 90s, So we don't have any of the modern electronic engine gauges that you'd see on a new boat. Just the old-fashioned steam gauges and engine room checks. They work just fine. Over here we have some Tank Sentry Headhunter product gauges for fuel and water tanks. And back at the nav desk, the aft side of the pilot house, we have a Maritron monitoring system. Keep an eye on tank levels, cameras, speeds, all sorts of things that we can monitor here, electrical use. When we're in cold weather like this, we don't need to run a generator much. We've got stacked Victron inverters. They provide 240 volt power for everything on board. We heat the boat with the diesel furnace. So we didn't, about the only thing we need the generators for is charging the batteries at anchor and making water. Two big water makers, and they need the generator on. Sea state right now is maybe 5 feet from behind. We got about 15 knots behind us of wind. Hard to see anything out here. But we got the side deck lights on. You can see the waves slipping past. No stars tonight. It's a cloudy evening in Alaska. That's night watch. We have 3 watch standers on board. We do 4 hours on, 8 hours off. And got plenty of time for rest. Pretty relaxing cruising most of the time.